I spent 3 years working in the Pacific with my colleague Ben Gilbert, who's on the screen, and I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Peter Zink, who's present, please stand, who's the UNFPA Health System Strengthening Representative, and we worked with him for 4 years with money provided by UNFPA, strengthening health systems with a particular focus on reproductive health commodities and competency development. This is the blue continent, which is the Pacific, which has the countries the size of small homes. There's one country called Tokelau with a population of approximately 1,300, and Tuvalu with a population of 12,500. These countries have votes at the UN and need to be looked after in terms of the competencies required for medicine supply chains. These are some of the pictures. I'm not sure if you can find me in there, but we'll keep going. Essential medicine supply community, whether it's reproductive health supply commodities or essential medicines, are particular issues in the Pacific. Apart from two universities, National University of Fiji and the Papua New Guinea University, there are no other training institutions for anyone in health logistics and supply chain. And in those particular environments, the health logistics curriculum is very small. A couple of the other projects we've worked on is developing distance education packages for pharmacy assistants, which have been trialled in the Pacific. Again, a lot of these countries are so small, they don't have education institutions. And so we're looking at creative measures in order to do that. One of the other particular issues is you have something called the no-do gap, which you hear about, where people understand the competencies, they're trained and provided with an understanding of their job, but when they go to the workplace, they don't act on their training. They've perhaps been shown to have the competencies, but don't act in their workplace. There are a lot of other cultural issues. Pacific Island countries, particularly their educational frameworks, have been developed from colonial powers, particularly England and France. And they're emerging out of those environments, finding their identity. A lot of the countries received independence in the sort of 70s, and so are emerging environments, particularly politically. One of the big challenges is a small amount of human resources. So let's think for a moment about the country of Tuvalu. How many people in their supply chain, run their supply chain? There's about 4. One of those is in charge, and they're in charge of determining what medicines the country should have in terms of what's on their essential medicines list, doing all of the quantification, organising the contracts and procurement, organising the supply system and the quality control mechanisms on all that. So in this country context, they're responsible for the whole competency compendium that's on our website. A lot of the countries in the Pacific the same. Vanuatu, they have now two pharmacists for 240,000 people. They also have 8 or maybe 9 pharmacy assistants responsible for pretty much the whole supply chain. So these are low resource environments. One of the concepts that we discussed with colleagues who were the leaders of these supply systems in countries was something called a buddy network. So being good Westerners in our ordinary discussions, we said, we have a solution for you. What we're going to do is link you up with experts from outside of the Pacific so you can get in contact with them and have a mentor program. And they said, thank you, Andrew, please listen. So we sat down and we listened. And what they said, what we'd really like you to do is to help us talk to each other, help us to communicate our stories, our experiences, and what we need to understand. And so with that as background, we've helped to facilitate a regional buddy network as part of an innovation grant from Gates. This grant has enabled the connection of these supply chain managers based around attempts to improve their immunisation supply systems. These countries are so small that they have completely integrated systems, that all the commodities go down the same chain, including the cold chain commodities, except for, I think it's Tonga, and also, we'll just say with Tonga for the moment. A couple of the countries don't have full integration. The whole idea about the buddy network was this communal problem solving, reduced professionalisation, and particularly getting feedback. One of the Pacific cultural issues is that they are cousins or brothers together, and sisters as well. They would say brothers, but they're the Pacific way. And in doing that, there's a lot of consultation that goes on. And so in this environment, Ben, my colleague, has been running it. And what they've attempted to do is learning from each other's challenges and experiences, approaching our situation with new ideas. It's one of the quotes from one of the participants. And to do that was looking at the existing networks that we've built up over 3 years, and what we call level 3 workers, which are the leaders of the supply chain either at a regional or a country level, to facilitate regular communication and engagement, as well as some accountability. As part of the whole process, and it's quite interesting to try and put this to Gates, because really when you start thinking about it, it's a warm, fuzzy project. How do you put a research framework around it in order to catch improvements in supply chain performance, as well as improve competence? This was difficult, and we'll tell you in a few weeks, after Gates considers the appraisal for further funding, whether we've made the mark, but it was quite difficult. But what we were looking at is the application of training in the workplace, deep learning, communal problem solving, down to sort of impact on training fatigue. One of the things that we found in our research, that these leaders of the country might have been out of their posts for up to 6 weeks a year, having training from a variety of players. This also we found in the service delivery point level, but for this particular talk, we're thinking about that. So if you've got this one person responsible for the whole supply chain, and they're out of the system for 6 weeks, then things perhaps stop. The network's been operating for 18 months. There's 38 members from 18 of the countries listed on the screen. And then there are some outside of the community members, so I'm a member of the community, for example, a number of others. Overall, what happened is one member retired during that period, one member was inactive, 3 invitees chose only to receive newsletters, and 9 invitees did not respond to the survey, for which I'll show you just a couple of results. There was 2,500 episodes of communication that occurred between this group, 14 newsletters published, and a website. There were 6 and 12-month member surveys completed, and leadership skills identified as a key issue in this particular community. Member hopes of the network have been met a lot, which was a statistically significant finding from those using a 5-point Likert scale who returned their survey. We haven't put all the statistics in this particular presentation, but reducing professionalisation, they felt connected. Workplace confidence, they felt with support from their peers that they could work in their environment. Another interesting one was minimising training fatigue, they put as neutral. So one of the benefits, of course, of regional trainings is they get to meet their colleagues face-to-face, share stories, as well as the social part, which is very important to them culturally. And so an environment like this, although they found helpful, they missed that face-to-face connection and the handshake. So I'll let you have a read through those comments, which are some of the comments that we've taken from the survey results, but particularly I'll emphasise a couple. With other countries sharing problems, I was able to identify areas for improvement for the Federated States of Micronesia. Very confident to ask colleagues around the Pacific Island community on any query I have in mind, for example, regarding pharmacy activities. Increased sense of responsibility to do the job well and report it to the group. There's some fantastic stories on the website about sharing issues and improvements. And one particularly interesting one is the middle quote, with the assistance rendered toward the rehabilitation process following the fire that occurred to the pharmacy in 2013 in Nauru. It's quite interesting to see the fire wiped out this particular pharmacy, which is the national stocks, and over the course of a couple of weeks, this community was mobilised to send pharmaceuticals from their stores in order to help in that environment. Lessons learned. Regular engagement is challenging to achieve. I'm not sure if you've tried using Skype in environments with low broadband width or intermittent internet. It's tough. I'm not sure if you've tried to phone colleagues using a phone in Pacific Island environments when that phone is a landline and that person could be in one of 8 different buildings doing their job. And so this has been a couple of the issues in terms of regular contact. And just because you've sent an email doesn't mean that it will be read and replied to. It was interesting, in one of the workshops we had leading up to this particular study, we asked the people in the room, put your hand up if you like using email to send messages. 90% of the people put their hand up. Put your hand up if you read your email at least every 2 days. Hands went down. So just because you sent an email doesn't mean the message got there. And so part of what we've learnt here is that it's important to check that the messages have been sent and received, and that's tough. The next steps is to increase activity. Now that great big long letters, P, is basically the Pacific Buddy Network. The first leadership module developed and to be delivered in November 2014. Would you believe with a small Gates grant we were underspending? We went to Gates to say we're not going to spend it all in the time period. They said come up with a creative solution. We spoke with our colleagues in the university and we've got 2 modules of a leadership course that we've been able to develop and we'll be delivering in a culturally appropriate way remotely to those who are interested over the next 6 months leading up to the end of the grant. And so I've put Ben in contact with Masunda and Bridget as part of this developing leadership community. What we're then looking to do is to accredit the leadership course in order so that they can use this as their badge in their workplace to receive more recognition for that. So that's just a brief overview. And here's some of the faces and the people. And what we're looking at in the future is to try and sort of see if we can settle this down and expand it. And we've certainly found it to be a model for remote communities. And thank you very much.